It'll be interesting to see whether or not under this new, the police being able to stand for local body councils, whether maybe some of the bylaws that will come out of that is being able to use a gun in urban areas. Let's wrap the show with last word. Mr. Manning, your last word this week, please.
Well, I'm kind of wondering whether or not the Australian Prime Minister and the New Zealand Prime Minister will have the courage bomber to actually subscribe to the view of the Vanuatu Parliament, where it is going to ask all leaders of the Pacific in 2 weeks' time if they will support putting in independent observers into West Papua. Yep. And the reason for that is to actually observe to see what exactly is going on between the Indonesian military forces and how it is oppressing the people in West Papua.
Are we a very good guardian of the Pacific?
We had a good, strong role in the previous government.
Yep.
This new government is very, very lax on it. And also, obviously Australia, with a new Prime Minister, has not got a strong ground. There is a power void in the Pacific at the moment. The Melanesians, Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, West Papua, and Fiji on the other side, are all positioning to take a more front foot role in the Pacific Islands Forum in August. But this issue of West Papua, that is a big one, because that tests really the humanitarian ideals of both the new Australian Prime Minister and that of New Zealand's Prime Minister John Key over political alliances with Indonesia.
What do you fear will be the outcome?
I think they'll just subscribe to the status quo, but I would hope that they would listen to the humanitarian calls that are coming out from a people that are being murdered and oppressed and have been for some time, only because it's a mineral-rich country. Big nations like Indonesia and the United States want to exploit that.
Ms. Fletcher, your final word for the show?
I'd like to throw my support behind the New Zealand Coalition for Ending Homelessness call this week for a parliamentary inquiry into homelessness. And this is something that Labor have supported, that National are avoiding. Now, we've seen that Judith Collin has instituted more addiction centres in prisons, but and she's argued that 2/3 of people that go into prison have drug and alcohol problems or psychological problems. I would like to see Judith Collins and the National Party actually put some of the support out on the streets where it's needed. Last year, at the beginning of the year in February, there were estimates that said there were as many as 20,000 people that were homeless in New Zealand, and that it may be as much as 3 times as what we previously thought. Now, we've got the Rugby World Cup coming up in 2011. You can bet that if John Banks gets in as Super City candidate, we are going to see movements to ban homeless people from the inner city. I think this is an issue that we absolutely must deal with now, and I think it's up to National if they're going to put through these stringent economic policies that are putting more stress on families and people to actually buttress our social needs as well.
Yeah. But couldn't you argue that National is in fact helping homelessness by creating more homelessness, because the spike in evictions from Housing New Zealand have jumped? They're helping out. They're getting more people onto the streets living there. Isn't that a positive?
I don't think it is a positive. I mean, I was in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago, and I got the opportunity to walk through downtown Los Angeles at 7 o'clock in the morning.
How's that?
Quite frightening, to be honest. It is one of the very dangerous areas in Los Angeles. It's an area that has a lot of homeless people. And then a few days later, I was at a conference where I got to hear this guy, David Wagner, from the University of Southern Maine, talking about the way that homelessness has been dealt with in the United States. And he talks about how in the 1980s it became a major social issue. It was on the front of all of the newspapers. You got something like 3,500 shelters built across the United States. But then by the end of the 1980s, you had a public backlash. And basically, people got sick of the issue of homelessness, and basically Americans learnt how to live with it. I would hate to see this happen in New Zealand.
Thank you, Ms. Fletcher. Thank you, Mr. Manning. Ladies and gentlemen, my final word is on the 90-day right to sack. Giving the boss the right to sack will kill off anyone leaving their job for a new job, because in an unemployment environment as hostile as the current one, and with such uncertain global economic outlooks, no one is going to risk what they currently have for a position they may get fired from for no reason whatsoever. Rat bosses will abuse the vulnerability caused by high unemployment, and this right to sack can easily cross the floor and dance with its ugly cousin, exploitation. That the trial was able to sack 1 in 5 New Zealanders and the number of new workers is 400,000 per year, then this scheme will actually sack 80,000 New Zealanders. But the really offensive part of the 90-day right to sack is the fact that we have a merchant banker Prime Minister who is selling these erosions of workers' rights as for the benefit of those very same workers. Oh, the audacity. On next week's Citizen A, editor of Tumeki Tim Selwyn joins Cameron Slater from Whale Oil. If you like tonight's show, please check out Citizen A Facebook site. Thanks for watching, whānau. Good night, Aotearoa.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.